Hi everyone, so today is Friday, April 17th, 2020, and we are doing the fourth lesson. The topic is distributive property, and you can find this on page 9 of your work booklets, your handouts that you printed off last week, and I'm going to go through the examples on this page today. Okay, first example, I want to do a comparison between using bed mass and using the distributive property, which I will show you how it works, on the same question. Okay, so using the order of operations, using bed mass says to do brackets first, then exponents, then division, then multiplication, then addition, and then subtraction. So we've got brackets in here, so I'm going to work out what's inside this bracket first. 6 plus 4 is 10. And then that's going to get multiplied by the 2 up front in the next step. 2 times 10 is 20. Okay, now what about if we had to do the same problem but using the distributive property? Distributive property says to take whatever is in front of a bracket and multiply it by everything inside. So 2 will get multiplied by the 6, and 2 will get multiplied by the 4, right? It's getting distributed to everything that's inside the bracket. 2 times 6, write out what we're doing. So we're doing 2 multiplied by 6, and then to that we're going to add 2 multiplied by 4. And then we'll add our answers together. Okay, so 2 times 6 is 12, and 2 times 4 is 8. And when you add those together, you get 20, which is the same answer we got using bed mass. Okay, it's just two different methods to solve the same question. So the rule for distributive property is to multiply every term inside the bracket by the term in the front. All right, so if we're using letters instead of numbers, it would be a times x and then a times y. A times x is ax, and a times y would be ay. So that would be the simplified version, okay, or expanded version. All right, example 2. Several sections to that. We've got 3 times 4x that we have to multiply first, and then 3 times negative y. I'm adding these little, they look like little rainbow lines, okay, just to keep track of where I am. So 3 times 4x, let's write down what we're doing. So 3 times 4x, and then 3 times negative y. Okay, I'm showing my work. Make sure when you're doing your homework, you're showing your work as well. 3 times 4x is 12x, and 3 times negative y would be negative 3y. And then they get added together. Notice when you have two signs that are opposite next to each other, right, that gives you a negative sign. So I can combine those in the last line for one negative. All right, for this example here, what I can do is I'm going to take this 8 and just move it to the front. Okay, move that to the front so that it looks similar to the other questions. Okay, and now we're multiplying the 8 by the 5. I'll use a different color. Okay, so we have our 8 in the front here now. So 8 times 5, and we're multiplying 8 times negative x. Okay, showing my work again. 8 times 5, 8 times negative x. Okay, now you can work it out. 8 times 5 is 40 plus negative 8x. And again, once again, if you have two signs next to each other that are not the same, just make it one negative sign. And last one on this page, x multiplied by 2x. And then I'm going to multiply x times y. Right? If we've only, these are binomials, right? It's a monomial multiplied by a binomial. This system works even if you have a trinomial inside the bracket, right? Doesn't matter how many terms you have inside, you're always going to multiply every single term in the bracket by whatever term is in the front. Okay, so I did x times 2x and then x times y. And so for here, you need to remember your rules for multiplying monomials. right? That was in the last lesson. X times 2x, you're adding the exponents on the x's, right? It's the same base. They have a little 1 on top of on top of them, right? So 1 plus 1 is 2. That's why it's 2x squared. D and E on this slide. Okay, so here we have a monomial being multiplied by a trinomial. Same system. Okay, negative 2 times 5a, negative 2 times negative 2b, and negative 2 times 3c. If you try to go right to the final answer, there's a chance you're going to make an error. All right, so that showing that in between that this step over here, okay, helps you be organized and increase your chance of getting the right answer at the end. Okay, so I'm adding, okay, every time it's always addition. And then in the brackets, sometimes I have a negative term. It depends on if we have negative terms up here. So negative 2 times 5a, negative 2 times negative 2b, and negative 2 times 3c. And now I'm working each section out separately. So negative 2 times 5 is negative 10, and then 1a. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, and then a b. And then here we have plus negative 2 times 3c. Negative 2 times 3c is going to be negative, so we have a negative answer here. Plus a negative answer is just going to give us one negative. E, we don't have a number or a letter in front of either of these brackets. Okay, so all this is collecting like terms. We can just remove the brackets. There's nothing in the front. So in this step, I just simply remove the brackets, and now I'm asking myself, which terms can I group together, right? Which ones have the same endings? So we have a 3x and a 9x. They have the same ending. We can add those together. 3x plus 9x is like saying, what is 3 apples plus 9 apples, right? It would be 12 apples. We're not multiplying here, so nothing is happening with the x's. Right, over here we were multiplying, so our endings would change. Here they're not changing. And then 2y and a 7y, we can group those together. Okay, so I just added the x's. 3 plus 9 is 12, and I added the y's. 2 plus 7 is y. F and G. All right, so in front of this bracket, we have a 2x, and in front of this bracket, we have a negative 1. Okay, we don't write a 1, but we know if there's a negative sign, it's like negative 1 in the front. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is multiply x plus 7, okay, everything in that bracket by the 2x out front. So we want to do 2x times x and 2x times 7. All right, then we want to do negative 1 times 6x squared and negative 1 times negative 3. All right, so 2x times x, 2x times 7 right here, and then negative 1 times 6x, negative 1 times negative 3. Notice I always have pluses between my little sections that I've multiplied together, okay, between my terms. All right, now simplify everything. So 2x times x, you should know already, is 2x squared, right? When we're multiplying here, means we're going to add the exponents on letters that have the same base, or terms that have the same base. 2x times 7 is 14x. Negative 1 times 6x squared is negative 6x squared. And negative 1 times negative 3 is positive 3. And in the last step, you just want to check to see if there's any terms that you can add together or subtract, right? Any that have the same ending. So we have a 2x squared and a negative 6x squared. Those two can be combined. 2 minus 6 is negative 4. And then we have an x term and then just a constant at the end. So we can just rewrite those. And the last one on this page, negative 4x squared. multiplied by a trinomial. Okay, so I'm going to put my little rainbow lines in. I encourage you to do the same thing. I think it makes it more helpful. All right, and then I'm just showing my work. I'm just writing down what I'm multiplying. Okay, so all of those terms are going to get multiplied by negative 4x squared, right, at the front. Negative 4x squared times 2x squared. We're multiplying now, so the endings are going to change. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. And then x squared times x squared is x to the exponent of 4. Plus negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. And then we have an x squared and an x. That's going to give me x cubed. And then at the end, plus negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. So I'm going to have a minus as my sign. Forgot to add my brackets here. There we go. And you are going to add one more line here, okay, because you don't want to have a plus and a minus next to each other. So I'm just going to add one more line. Equals, and what do we have, a minus there? Yeah. So negative 8x squared plus 16x cubed minus 12x squared. And then just make, you have to make all these exponents. That should be a 4. All right, that looks good. Okay, last example, and then we have one word problem, I believe. Okay, so one more. Nothing different on this one here. I'm going to put my little rainbow lines in. And just showing what I'm multiplying here, the 3a squared b has to get multiplied by each of these terms. All right, and then multiply the coefficients first, so 3 times 2 is 6, and then worry about the letters with the same base. So we've got a squared and an a. All right, you're going to add those exponents. 2 plus 1 is 3, and then we have a b to the 1 and b to the 1, so that's going to give you b squared. And I did the same thing for the last two terms. And then at the end, you're collecting like terms for, and I don't think we can here. No, all these have different endings. So we're going to end up with 3 terms. All I did here is I combined the positive and the negative into one negative for these 2 terms down here. All right, so the last question is a word problem. We have a rectangular field, and the length is represented by 4a minus 7 meters, and the width is represented with 3a meters. Find a simplified expression for the perimeter and the area. So I made a little diagram first. I called this my length side, and then this my width, and I wrote in the expressions that were given in the problem. All right, so for perimeter, you should remember that the perimeter is the addition of all the sides around the outside, as if you were making a fence along the outside. All right, so it would be length plus width plus width. So I wrote my equation first, and then I replaced my L's with what my lengths were. In the third line. I did simplify my L plus W to 2L plus 2W because we have 2 lengths plus 2 widths. And then I replaced my L with the expression and the W with my expression. And then I used our distributive property that we just learned. 2 times 4a, 2 times negative 7, and then 2 times 3a. 8a minus 14 plus 6a, and then I combine the 8a and the 6a together to give me 14a minus 14. Okay, can't go any further because you can't add or subtract terms that have different endings. This one has an a, this one doesn't. So that is a simplified expression for perimeter area. Similar idea. To find the area, you multiply length times width, or width times length. Okay, I said length times width, which gave me 4a minus 7 times 3a. And then I just flip this to the front so that it looks like the other questions when we use a distributive property to make it look a little bit clearer. So 3a times 4a is what I want to work out, and then 3a times negative 7. 3a times 4a, 3 times 4 is 12, a times a is a squared, so 12a squared, and then 3a times negative 7 is negative 21a. All right, so those are your examples. You've got textbook questions to do for Monday. Your next lesson will be on Monday, so you should have your homework done by that point. Several questions that I picked out for you that I think are good to do. Just wanted to give you a little tip, or wanted to work out what 14a would be for you, because this one uses distributive property, but there's fractions in the front, and none of my other examples had fractions in the front. So I just wanted to, take you through that. So I am going to use a distributive property. So I want to work out what 1/4 times 8x is, and 1/4 times 3 is. So you would have studied fractions in elementary school, but it depends on how much of that you remember. So 1/4 times 8 is essentially saying, what is 1/4 of 8? All right, so if you have, let's say you have 8 pizza slices, and you wanted to figure out what 1/4 of those 8 slices would be. If you had 4 friends, right, there's 4 of you and you've got 8 pizza slices, how many slices is each person going to get? Right, they're going to get 2 slices. Now, using the rules for multiplying fractions, I'll do that for you. Okay, so if 1/4 times 8, okay, is the same thing as 1/4 times 8 over 1. And the rules for fractions says you multiply the 2 top numbers and the 2 bottom numbers. All right, so 1 times 8 is 8, and 4 times 1 is 4, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. All right, so you're going to get the same answer as, if you think of it as the pizza slices and you've got 4 people to divide it amongst them. When you do 1/4 times 3, if you have 3 pizza slices and there's 4 friends, assuming everybody's going to eat, what would 1/4 of 3 slices be? If you have a hard time kind of envisioning that in your head, it might be easier to use this method here. So 1/4 times 3, okay, or 3 over 1. Multiply the top numbers, that gives you 3. And the bottom numbers, that gives you 4. All right, so if you had 3 pizza slices and there's 4 of you to eat, each person would be able to eat 3/4 of a slice, okay, to make it fair for everybody. Okay, so use that method to work this out. So 1/4 times 8x is 2x, 1/4 times 3 is 3/4. That's what I showed on the side here. Use the same method for the second part. 1/3 times 6x is 2x, and 1/3 times 2 is going to be 2/3. All right, so now you're going to collect like terms. 2x plus 2x. I'm going to write beside each other the terms that we're going to group together. So 2x plus 2x we're going to group together, and then the 3/4 plus 2/3 we're going to group together. This part's easy. 2x plus 2x is 4x. Adding fractions is what you might have a little bit of trouble with if you've forgotten how to do those from elementary. But I'll show you an example of how to add fractions. So 3 over 4. Just bear with me. I'm trying to use my mouse to write, and it's not the easiest. Okay, 3 over 4 plus 2 over 3. If you're adding fractions, you need these bottom numbers to be the same, right? You need them to be equal to each other. So what's a common denominator, okay, for 3 and 4? What number is divisible by, can we divide 4 and 3 by? All right, it would be 12 because you can do 12 divided by 4, and you can also do 12 divided by 3. So I'm going to say 12 at the bottom. How do you get this 12 from that 4? What do you have to do? Right? What do you multiply the 4 by to get this 12? Well, you multiply this by 4. Sorry, by 3. Okay? If you multiply the bottom by 3, you have to do the same thing to the top. You have to be fair. All right? 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 3 is 9. So that gives me the number at the top. And then for the second fraction, how do I go from the 3 to the 12? What do I multiply that number by? 3 times 4 gives me 12. And do the same thing to the top to be fair. So the top is going to be 2 times 4, which is 8. Okay, so now you've got the same denominator, okay, for each of those fractions. So now you can just add the two top numbers. So 8 plus 9 is 17. And the bottom numbers you don't add. You just leave your denominator that you had used. Okay, so that's how you add fractions that don't have the same denominator. And that's it. I don't think there's anything else. Oh, there is one more thing. I did open up 3 knowledge hook activities for you to try. Those are not due until April 30th, and they will probably be part of Monday's homework. But if you do finish all the homework from today, that's due on Monday, and you've done everything else for your other courses in our Google Classroom, then you can go ahead and try some of these questions here. But I would do the textbook questions first. Some of these are a little bit tough, and so it'd be great to start off with some of the easier questions. All right, thanks for listening, and good luck with your homework. Send me an email if you have any questions. Bye, guys.